We are officially in phase 2 of the global transition to a Bitcoin standard, and the market is slowly realizing that gold is just the waiting room. I'm joined by Marty Bent to discuss why the traditional 4-year Bitcoin cycle is dead and why the current $37 trillion of US debt is signaling a total breakdown of the fiat monetary system. We also dive into why nation states are falling back on hard money and a specific moment when they will realize that Bitcoin is way superior than gold. And stick around as Marty reveals why he thinks the current American tax system has become a humiliation ritual and how Bitcoin enables you to opt out. All right, let's dive in. Marty Bent, welcome back to Bitcoin for Millennials.
Bram, it's great to be back with another millennial.
Yeah, well, it's good to see you. I am happy that we started the year green. I'm actually also happy that we ended the year in the red. I think you're also quite in the middle, of all the discourse and stuff. I think you would agree that the 4-year cycle is dead. Maybe the concept of cycles is not dead. But I'm actually pretty happy. Like, it just shakes stuff up. I think a lot of people were kind of like lulled to sleep, kind of bored.
Yeah, and it's a validation of something that many Bitcoiners, myself included, have been saying for years, which is this 4-year cycle is not going to go on forever. If Bitcoin breaks through an amorphous adoption threshold that's like hard to tell, then the sort of booms and bust of years past are not going to be the same moving forward. Not to say that the price is never going to go down or there won't be corrections, but it feels like we're in a different environment and a different sort of phase of Bitcoin's life cycle. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's also becoming more clear that the underlying thesis never really went away and is basically only accelerating. I think I've heard you say before, and I think this is what a lot of people share, like humans struggle to understand exponential growth. And last week I looked at the US debt clock again and I saw like 37 trillion. And I tried to like visualize the number and my brain just broke. Where do you think we are at? How long can they kick the can down the road? How long can they play, all this trickery before, just enough? I don't know what enough is, but like enough people wake up to the fact that, we're really approaching this breaking point of fiat money. How do you think about that?
I think we're already there. And this is something Matt and I have discussed on Rabbit Hole Recap for years now at this point. And I think we've been pretty consistent with this, which is the trajectory of the adoption of a Bitcoin standard is going to go. You're going to have a massive expansion of debt and money printing, which happened between 2008 and post-COVID era or COVID era. And then just from familiarity, you're going to have the nation states fall back on precious metals, gold and silver. And I think last year was a validation of that. And it's a continuation this year with gold and silver hitting new all-time highs. And then the market ultimately, who knows how long it takes, but they'll recognize that Bitcoin is superior to those precious metals. And then we'll start the transition to a full-on Bitcoin standard. And I think we're in phase 2 of that, where you have nation states and large institutions, hedge funds and individuals even here in the States. I think that's why gold and silver prices are screaming, is because people are demanding the physical instead of the paper. And so I think we're in phase 2 of that 3 phase where you have debt expansion, money printing, a fallback to familiar hard money, reserve assets like gold and silver, and then ultimately the market comes to recognize that Bitcoin is superior to those reserve assets because of the way it works. It's digital, it's scarce, it's divisible, you can send it over the internet, blah, 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 everything we all know. So I think we're in phase 2 of that right now.
How fast do you think that realization into Bitcoin goes, actually? Because I think the word familiarity that you use, I think that's a good word. I'm going to use that too, right? Like I think it's an argument that gold people use a lot, right? Like, oh, the central banks are buying gold, they aren't buying Bitcoin, or the gold is going up and Bitcoin is not going up. And I just translate that in my head to, yeah, that's why it's an asymmetric opportunity, because you understand the problem, but you're buying the wrong thing, in my opinion, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the longer it takes, the more options, or well, the more opportunity there is for more regular people to understand that they shouldn't stand in line at some gold store, but rather get some Bitcoin. What do you think is the big signal that the average person is still dismissing as kind of like noise? I, for example, think there's the whole mixture of Bitcoin with crypto, FTX trauma, stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I'll play devil's advocate, and instead of focus on like retail individuals, really focusing on like sovereigns and central banks. And we were on a 1031 investor call, and we got asked this question yesterday, and I responded in this way. Obviously, there was a lot of people that were butthurt that gold and silver were pumping last year, and Bitcoin was down to relatively flat. However, if you just think about what was happening from like a perspective of practicality, if these sovereign nations and institutions recognize that there's a debt problem, that there's a geopolitical sort of rift, and we're moving towards this multipolar world and away from the rules-based order that has persisted since the end of World War II, they have a ton of money that they have to transition out of the assets that are exposed to that rules-based order, sort of incumbent fiat system. And if you're just looking at it from a pure flows and slippage perspective, even the gold and silver were up massively last year, I believe 65 and 120% respectively. You have trillions of dollars that have flown into those markets. So you had trillions of dollars that were taken away from other assets and had to go into hard assets, and gold and silver specifically. And I think from a practical perspective, gold and silver actually make a lot of sense, because if you're rotating that much flow out of traditional paper assets into hard assets, you don't want a lot of slippage, and you want to basically get your hands on a hard reserve asset that's not going to run away from you as you're buying it. Whereas Bitcoin, sitting between $1.5 and $2 trillion market cap, if they were to try to push those flows into Bitcoin, you'd have insane slippage. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's part of the reason. I think it's twofold. Again, the familiarity, and then the practicality of, okay, we've got hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars collectively that we need to rotate. Am I going to go into this $2 trillion asset, or these assets that are orders of magnitude bigger than that? Yeah. And again, I think there is signal that some of these entities recognize that Bitcoin is superior. I think particularly out of Venezuela. Who knows exactly how much Bitcoin the Maduro regime accumulated, but I think the headlines of them doing gold swaps for Bitcoin and selling oil for Tether and then sweeping that to the Bitcoin do have validity behind them. I think, at least in many cases, those transactions were confirmed by media and people in the know. And so that is a signal that the Maduro regime, whether you like them or not, I don't like them. I think most people don't like, weren't fond of that regime. They did recognize that they needed to diversify away from their hard assets with the gold swap specifically. They diversified into Bitcoin, and then with the oil trades, trading oil for Tether, and then recognizing that Tether is a centrally controlled entity that could freeze their stable coins at any moment. So they swept it to Bitcoin. Like there was a recognition from the Maduro regime that Bitcoin has these properties unlike any other hard asset, and they were using it. And so I think we're on a journey towards more people recognizing that. I think just because of the relatively small size of the Bitcoin liquidity pool compared to gold and silver, that's going to be a slow transition, but it is, I think, underway.
When it comes to holding Bitcoin securely, peace of mind starts with architecture. On-ramp's multi-institution custody model distributes control access across 3 independent regulated key holders in a 2 of 3 multi-sig quorum. No single point of failure, no pooled or omnibus exposure, just segregated client-titled vaults. You retain full legal ownership while on-ramp coordinates security, compliance, and operational workflows behind the scenes. Multi-institution custody is the foundation for everything that on-ramp builds. Sound infrastructure that distributes counterparty risk and provides fault-tolerant resilience with clear audits and institutional controls. And now on-ramp is piloting flat, predictable pricing to make best-in-class Bitcoin custody and financial products more accessible than ever. Visit onrampbitcoin.com to learn more and sign up with code BRAM, that's BRAM, to receive $150 in Bitcoin after your first deposit. On-ramp, strength in many, simplicity in one. When times are good, people are in paper assets. They know that they are paper, right? And like you said, well, if people are smelling uncertainty, then they're going in hard assets. And kind of surprises me that still a lot of people know, I would say, that there are 2 different games, right? Like the paper assets is a different game than the hard money assets. And even within the hard money assets, you have, different games again. And so I also feel like this understanding of Bitcoin is like at the surface. But you only see it when you like really look at it. Does that make sense? Is that also like your experience when you talk to people? I just think it's so interesting. Like, at least for me, and I think also for you, it's like very clear, but it's hard to grok if you don't open your mind in a certain way. I don't really know what it is.
I think there's a lot of confusion out there, right? Because you have this conflation of broader crypto with Bitcoin. There's another thing I said on our investor call yesterday is that the Trump administration here in the United States, I mean, they've been very good for the Bitcoin industry, but also very good for the broader crypto industry. And I'm not sure how closely you're following the U.S. headlines as they pertain to Bitcoin and crypto, but it seems like the tenor on Capitol Hill is that like doors are wide open for crypto innovation, and we're going to lean into that. So I think there's also this hesitation that exists out there because with the administration going full bore behind the broader crypto industry and Bitcoin being a subset of that industry, I think there's basically this deer in a headlight situation where they're trying to pick the right horse. Like the government, unfortunately for us, I don't think is sending the right message. There's a lot of noise in the signal of the posture towards the industry. And so I think there's, again, this reoccurring theme of, Bitcoin is the MySpace. Like we should be backing the Facebook of cryptocurrency. And obviously stable coins is a massive theme that I think is sucking a lot of focus, attention, and capital away from Bitcoin. But I think this is a temporary aberration. People will ultimately learn that Bitcoin's the thing that they should be focusing on.
So as you know, on one side, I think more traditional banks are moving in some way, shape, or form into Bitcoin. I think there was something with Citibank and, JP Morgan. In my country, there's actually 2 traditional banks that are now offering Bitcoin ETFs and stuff like that. How are you seeing that development, plus the fact that there is something coming? I think we both think in like the banking system, the money system, right? Liquidity issues, stuff like that. How is Bitcoin going to show itself in that chaos, you think? Bitcoin in a sense is kind of like a truth machine. Like I said, like you have it or you don't, right? When I verify it now, it's the same for me as it is for you, right? So it's like, it forces us to be transparent when we deal with each other, basically, or else I won't trust you, right? If your word says, I have it, but you're not showing me proof, then I know, just because it's possible that you can give me proof, that I shouldn't trust you, right? Whereas with all these fiat money games, it's just abstraction, obfuscation, etc. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Kind of like these two roads kind of clashing.
I think don't trust the banks, especially with your Bitcoin. And there's been a lot of headlines, a lot of banks launching buy, sell, custody, and signaling that they want to get into Bitcoin collateralized lending. However, I think just unless there's abnormal rush to get there, I think banks move extremely slow, particularly here in the United States. So I wouldn't hold my breath for the Bitcoin collateralized lending in the immediate short term, maybe in the medium term, but I would imagine it may take them a year or two to really get into it. And I think that provides an incredible opportunity for private or entities outside the banking sector that have already been offering these services to really lean in, and more importantly, like show the right way to do this and create optionality on the market to give consumers better options. And so I think I can't say anything too specific, but I do know that there are a number of private credit funds here in the United States that are getting ready to lean into residential mortgages using Bitcoin as collateral. In conversations with them, they're doing it the right way. Where what I think the banks will do when they get into this market is a lot of what they've become accustomed to, which is rehypothecate the assets that they have on their platform to get leverage and to sort of extend their profits in any way possible with their low margin businesses. And so I think it's incumbent on the sort of entities outside the banking system who really understand Bitcoin and the fact that there is no lender of last resort. You either have it or you don't, to build products that make it so it's almost impossible to lose your Bitcoin. And as an end consumer, you have certainty that your Bitcoin's not being rehypothecated and lent out to degenerate traders or whoever it may be. And so I think I've been saying this for years, and I think we're going to get to the point in the next 5 years where it becomes crystal clear is that if you're doing these Bitcoin collateralized lending products, whether it's just pure put Bitcoin up as collateral for some cash or put Bitcoin up for collateral for a mortgage or commercial real estate loan, whatever it may be, it should be locked up in a 2 or 3 multi-sig vault where the end consumer has a key, the counterparty in the transaction has a key, and then you have an impartial third party that holds a key as well. So you can have visibility into the wallet that holds your collateral throughout the duration of the loan and know that it's not being lent out and rehypothecated to people taking risk with that Bitcoin. And so I think the banking sector certainly sees that, hey, windows are open, all systems go, we can be building products here, and it's going to introduce new product lines that are going to make us some money. So let's get there. I think they're going to move slower than people expect. And I find it hard to believe that they will do it the right way unless there's pressure from entities outside of them providing products in the market that basically understand this truth machine that is Bitcoin, and the fact that you do not want to be rehypothecating it.
Mm-hmm. What I really enjoy about just your message in general, I think, is that you also agree that, you know, Bitcoin is this mirror. It's like this positive. It's something that creates positive incentives for people to build and do good, etc. Right? And I think a part of that is just practical, like I just said. It just forces you to be transparent, to walk your talk, basically, right? So if you're in an exchange with someone else where you're trying to use them, or whatever, doing it on a Bitcoin standard won't really get you that far. How do you think about how Bitcoin can coordinate this? Like how can good people build stuff outside of corrupt fiat money incentives?
I think it's happening already. You just build the right products, right? Like that's the beauty of Bitcoin. I've been saying this for the last year. Like, we have the ability to build a sci-fi banking stack that is completely separate from the banking system. And we're in that transitionary period, very early days of that transitionary period, where you do need to interact with the fiat system, but you can sort of bifurcate the Bitcoin side of things from the fiat side of things and ensure that the Bitcoin side of things is done the right way. And so to that point, I think it's just how do we do this is just backing entrepreneurs and picking up as an individual who believes that these products should exist, and if you have the wherewithal and the skills to bring them to market, like there's no better time to basically lean into it, because these products are going to be desperately needed. I think this idea of not having to sell your Bitcoin and being able to use it as collateral, whether it's just for cash or to put down some assets to get a mortgage, is only going to increase in demand, potentially exponentially, as we move forward. And so how do we do it? Is just the people who understand the intricacies of Bitcoin, most importantly, like multi-sig and collateral management, just need to go build the products, and they're being built. And so I think, and then beyond that, it's just getting the word out to people, like, hey, there's a right way to do this, and if you're not doing it this way, you're putting your Bitcoin at risk.
So what do you think is the most underappreciated or under-discussed aspect of Bitcoin right now then? Like Lightning or energy or anything more social? Like what are you seeing that others are not, you think?
I think the whole Bitcoin conversation, everything you just mentioned, everything we just talked about with collateral, I mean, the primitives to build this are all there right now. You can build this escrow, collateral escrow that gives the lender and the borrower assurance that the Bitcoin is where you think it's going to be and it's hard to lose. The energy side of things, like I think that's a theme that Bitcoiners have been banging the drum on for at least 8 years now. I think 2018 was when I really started leading into the narrative of Bitcoin being this incredible boon for the energy sector and energy infrastructure. That's the AI has sort of pushed that conversation over the edge, where it's very clear to everybody that we need a massive expansion of energy and compute, whether that's via Bitcoin mining or AI compute is going to be a part of that story. Lightning, I think, particularly with this agentic world coming at us at full steam ahead, the ability to equip agents with wallets, Bitcoin wallets specifically, that will allow them to conduct economic transactions, conduct commerce between each other and with companies that they're interacting with on behalf of the humans that are sending them out to do work, is going to be a massive unlock. I think what the team, like teams at Breeze, Money Dev Kit, I had Nick Slaney on TFTC earlier this week, what he's done to sort of incorporate an MCP framework for incorporating Bitcoin payments via Money Dev Kit into something like Replit. Like if you're a vibe coder using Replit or any other vibe coding tool, you can easily incorporate Bitcoin payments. And then beyond that, like the interoperability between Lightning and all these other second layer protocols that are being launched, like Chaumian Mints, Liquid, Arc, Spark, you name it. Like the infrastructure is more sound, more robust than it's ever been. So I think what is most underappreciated, I think the whole story collectively, I think it's coming together very nicely, and a lot of the things that we've been predicting for over a decade now at this point are coming true, and most people just don't recognize it. The tools and frameworks and dev kits needed to actually enable all these use cases that we've been talking about for a while, and the physical infrastructure needed to enable the energy synergies, they're all very mature now.
Yeah, you can just do the things.
You can. You can.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. I love that. Maybe this is kind of spicy, but I think you'll be up for it. Like I said, I think you would agree that Bitcoin is just mirrored. It creates certain positive incentive. Why do you think the path of Bitcoin is not just financially superior, but perhaps also morally superior? Like, why are we winning? Why is this the winning side of history?
I mean, it's, again, going back to a U.S.-centric view, I think what has happened over the last 2 months here in the United States in terms of, I mean, there's been tremors, obviously, this time last year. We had Donald Trump get into the office and Doge unearth a lot of overt fraud and waste with the government's funding of NGOs, particularly via USAID. And fast forward to a month ago with the Medicaid, Medicare fraud that's being unearthed in cities like Minneapolis, and since Nick Shirley did that investigative report, people have been sleuthing in states across the country and cities across the country and unearthing even more fraud. And I've been saying, I wrote a newsletter about it, did a video about it, and I've been talking about it pretty consistently over the last month. Like, taxation in the United States has become this humiliation ritual where we pay 30 to 40% of the income that we make to a government that is just wasting our money. And a lot of that waste, and the waste and the fraud is enabled via two mechanisms, or three mechanisms, really: taxation, debasement, and then the ability to issue debt to fund these things as well. And if you have a Bitcoin standard, it seems pretty clear that the potential to change that via the political apparatus, particularly here in the United States, is not easy. There's a lot of sort of gridlock in terms of being able to actually get things done, and the incentives on Capitol Hill are all out of whack. And it's a bipartisan, basically, agreement that, hey, we're going to continue spending money and funding all these massive spending bills because our constituents are quote unquote benefiting from this, and we just need more money for our constituents. And all that is enabled by the money printer, taxation, and debt expansion, which is not morally okay. Like, I do not feel good as an American taxpayer knowing that I'm paying taxes, working hard, and 4 months of my labor out of the year are going to the government, which is then handing that money to overt frauds who are either not working and sucking from the system, or taking that money and sending it to far off lands to fund things like terrorism. And so if you can't solve it via the political apparatus, which I think there is an earnest effort to do that, but it's like moving battleships. They move slow, and I don't think we have enough time to really depend on that. So if we could transition to a Bitcoin standard, it just makes all that significantly harder, because you can't print more Bitcoin. It's a push system. You can't just pull it from people. You basically have to sit down and have a conversation and justify why you're trying to take their money.
I think this is exactly what I want to focus on more, in a sense that people need to understand the size, or like the level of the battle that you're in, unfortunately, right? And not even by your own choice. I mean, I once heard that the American Revolution started over like a 2% T-tax. I'm not sure if that is factually correct, but it sounds kind of badass. Like 2-3 weeks ago, or like when the Nick Shirley thing went viral, there were a lot of people that were saying, like all these shorts or like TikToks that you saw that went somewhat viral. Like, okay, why do I work 2.5 days a week to send money to a government that can just create it from nothing and then spend it on interest payments for a debt that was spent on something that I don't really see any value from, right? Like, I don't think that's a strange thought. And I don't understand that if people way earlier were angry over a 2% T-tax, this is multiple levels more severe than the 2% T-tax, right? So what is it that it is so obvious you are spending your finite time and energy for a reward other people can create, and people just keep on doing it?
Well, I think we live in an era where on the social side of things, people have been dumbed down, sort of placated. I forget if it was 1984 or the other. 1984. I think it was 1984. But they talk about like this concept of soma, which was like a drug to placate the masses. And so like we've legalized weed here. We legalized sports gambling. The food system here in the United States particularly is terrible, makes you sick, and doesn't make you you're unable to think clearly if you're eating the slop that is mainstream these days. So I think people, and then on top of that, like people are stuck in the daily grind of working, of slaving away to contribute to the system, but in their minds, they're slaving away to make a better lives for themselves, and in many cases, here in the United States at least, just to survive. And so they get it's hard to focus on the core of the problem. You're too distracted by your own problems and getting to the next paycheck and paying the bills. And then on top of that, you've got these distractions, whether it's social media, trash TV, gambling, weed legalization. That sort of creates this fog that takes your attention away from the core of the problem. So you're in the rat race, you're on the hamster wheel. And then on top of that, you've got all these distractions that take away from your ability to actually think about what the core of the problem is and take a step back and identify it so that you can even begin to try to solve it. So I think that is a big driver of that sort of complacency that you described. But I think more people are starting to wake up. At least a critical mass of an intolerant minority is beginning to wake up. Like, this is not okay.
For my European friends that want to buy Bitcoin with ease, check out Relay. I've been a longtime fan and happy to partner up with what I think is the best Bitcoin-only platform for Europeans. They offer a super simple, beginner-friendly app with no distractions and no shitcoins. You can do a quick one-time smash buy or set up automatic purchases when you're stacking regularly. And here's the thing that matters most. Relay is 100% self-custody. Every set you hold is yours. Your keys, your coins. If you want to get started, download the app via my link below or in the description and use code BRAM, that's BRAM, at checkout to get 10% off your fees. A huge shout out to Relay for sponsoring the show. Now let's continue. Yeah, I mean, I follow everything you're saying, but then I'm also thinking, if I didn't do like groceries for the week and I just run to the grocery store to get like dinner for my family, it is expensive. Mm-hmm. Like it's honest. It is way more money units than I would have thought of in my head. Does that make sense? Like my reference from before is significantly lower than what I'm actually paying, right? And fortunately, I can still pay it, but I'm still thinking, what is happening here, right? And I'm just bewildered maybe by the fact that it's just not more obvious to people in some way, right? And I totally agree with what you said. Like, you do need to have like mind space to even, ponder this and reflect on it, and then, accept that you are being bamboozled and all these things, which is not a nice experience. So I totally understand it, but I just keep on thinking, like, what's the breaking point? Like, what does actually need to happen for people to wake up? And then if they do you think it would be too late, that there's like, when they get there, there's already, the bifurcation is already there. It's either like CBDC, digital jail, something, or, people have found another way out. I just, this is not really a positive topic, but I just wonder what other people are experiencing.
Well, they, at least here in the United States, like, they blame the big corporations. I think Zoran Mamdani, like him becoming mayor of New York City, is indicative of this problem, people misdiagnosing the problem and then putting forth terrible solutions, where I think he ran on a platform of free childcare, free transportation, and we're going to revamp the real estate market in the United States by taking the properties out of the hands of greedy landlords and really leaning into that. So I think one of the problems, particularly here in the United States, that has affected many people on the left, is that they think it's greedy corporations that are driving all this. And this is not to say that corporate greed doesn't exist and there aren't negative externalities that permeate from that corporate greed, but I think the core of the problem is that corporate greed is enabled by a government and a money printer that skews incentives and frameworks, economic frameworks from which people operate, and they're blaming the billionaire class and all that. And it's not to say that the billionaire class is squeaky clean and has there's no there's nothing that they're doing wrong that can be pointed out. I think there's plenty that they're doing wrong, but I think it's not the core of the problem. The core of the problem is the government intervention and central planning in our life, and the billionaire class, the greedy corporations, simply just know how to exploit that framework, that incentive system that gets put out by the central government. And I think things like Mamdani, we'll see how his mayoral candidacy goes over the next 6 years, I believe, but I don't think his policies are going to produce a better quality of life for New York City citizens. And so I think we just really need to get over the hump of the broader public recognizing that while the greedy corporations do have their problems and there is legitimate gripes to be had with them, the bigger problem is the governments and central control of market regulation and money printing, specifically in debt issuance.
What do you think will happen when Bitcoin kind of breaks through? I mean, I kind of see Bitcoin as a parallel thing, right? Like we moved to Bitcoin. We're now looking from Bitcoin to this old system. You know, this is Jeff Booth who says if you look at the new system from the old system, you cannot really, you're projecting all your old understanding on it, so you cannot really see it. But now I feel like, okay, they are kind of existing next to each other. But I also do feel that Bitcoin is kind of poking through sometimes, right? Or at least the money issue is poking through and stuff like that. What do you think will happen to people when they wake up maybe a bit more abruptly than we did?
I don't know exactly what will happen. My hope is that Bitcoin's this incredibly powerful technology in the sense that it's empowering, again, going back to individual agency. And if you do have that abrupt awakening, for lack of a better term, where people identify that the money is the problem and they have an option that cannot be controlled, an alternative option that can't be controlled by government, central banks, or large corporations, any individual, whoever it may be, they just simply adopt it and then begin coordinating amongst themselves outside of the purview of the incumbent system. And I think, again, we're still in the very early days of that, but I see that every day in my business. Like we have people that work for me that, some contractors outside the United States that do some work for us, and we'll pay them in Bitcoin. And it's a very straightforward thing. Like we report it on our accounting and on our taxes, but we're able to, again, bifurcating the fiat system from the Bitcoin system. We do that at our business, and it makes it flow very easily. And you just, in the scenario that you laid for us, like you just imagine that playing out at larger and larger scales. And the hope is that the fiat empire doesn't die with a bang, but a whimper. People like that. I think that's indicative of monetary systems that, or not monetary, just like empires that have sort of dissolved over time. It's like there's the fall of Rome being the most popular. Like everybody likes to say, what is it, 464 BC was when the empire officially ended, or not BC, AD was when the empire officially ended. But if you go back, there was like hundreds of years where it was just a slow whimper and a decay. And then you wake up one day and the Roman Empire just doesn't exist. And so I think with the fiat empire that we're subjected to now, I think it'll be similar, where people just recognize they have alternative options and an alternative option in Bitcoin and begin adopting it and using that as their monetary system, the way they save their money and the way they interact throughout the economy. And the fiat system dies with a whimper. Obviously, we'll have fits and bangs in between. I think we're seeing it in Iran now. The Iranian rial is completely debased within a couple of weeks. And I think that'll happen in many other currency systems throughout the world between now and then. But when it comes to the dollar reserve system, I think it's more of a whimper at the end of the day. People just start adopting better money.
What would be your advice, or like how do you translate why Bitcoin is the only tool for millennials to opt out of this kind of rigged game. People feel they're stuck, but they don't really know why, and they're pointing fingers, but nothing, or they're voting on a different person, but nothing really changes. How do you explain that? Why is Bitcoin the opt out of the game? Why do you actually go into this parallel thing?
We've never raised a dime of outside capital at TFTC, and we've been able to hire and keep expanding because we've run our company on a Bitcoin standard for 8 years now. It's just easier. And like I said earlier, going back to like the fundamentals, what's underappreciated in Bitcoin, the whole story, but particularly the ability to incorporate Bitcoin into your business or your personal life has never been easier, whether that's getting paid in fiat, but automatically converting that to Bitcoin via apps like Strike or Fold here in the United States. And then living on a Bitcoin standard. Those two companies have bill pay too, so you can live on a Bitcoin standard, pay your fiat denominated bills using Bitcoin, using those services. And so I would just lean on it's easier, and not only from a sort of user experience perspective, but from an intellectual capital perspective too. If you're out there thinking that you need to put together a pristine portfolio of equities to outpace inflation, and you have to do all this equities research on individual companies or indices, that could take up a lot of time, and you could make the wrong bet on an individual company, where with Bitcoin, it's a very simple system, very simple protocol, 21 million blocks every 10 minutes, difficulty adjustment every 2016 blocks, subsidy halving every 210,000 blocks. Like, you know what it is, you know what it's going to do. You should have confidence that more people are going to recognize that value prop and funnel into Bitcoin as well, which should push the price higher. And so, like, from an intellectual sort of capital perspective, in terms of banging your head against the wall trying to figure out how you're going to outpace inflation, Bitcoin makes it very simple. Just buy this scarce digital neutral reserve asset instead of trying to put together a pristine portfolio.
I also think for some people it just seems too good to be true, and it kind of pushes them away, which I totally understand. But the other side of that thinking is kind of like, but what if it works? You know, how profound is that if it would actually work as advertised, air quotes, right? Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and what do you have to lose? Especially if you're one of those millennials already working paycheck to paycheck, you're worried about it, you're only saving a little bit of money. Like, is it going to be that much of a hindrance on your long-term financial well-being if you take a little bit of risk in Bitcoin? Like, I don't think so. And if you're right, if we are right, I think we are right. I think time is proving that we are right. You're going to benefit massively. So I think at least get your toes wet and allocate some portion of your savings or your investment funds into Bitcoin. I would recommend a vast majority of it goes into Bitcoin, but I'm a crazy Bitcoiner.
Same. So to wrap up, what is a thing that you think will be common sense in 5 years, in 2030, that is currently considered a radical conspiracy today? Could be anything.
This is, I'm not sure if you saw it, but I don't know, it's just because it's top of mind. I was talking about it with my brother a couple of days ago, but there's, I think one thing that we have to worry about and understand better is this massive expansion of the energy sector and the energy systems and substations. And we have these gigawatt data centers that are coming to the market. Is the effects of the electromagnetic fields that these power dense localities provide. There was a story out of San Francisco earlier or late last week that there's like a pretty sizable substation that sits right next to the San Francisco 49ers football field, the practice facility, and where they play games. And if you look at the data for what's it called, ligament tears within the San Francisco 49ers organization. It's an outlier in the NFL, and there's theories that these substations are creating electromagnetic fields around the stadium that are sort of eroding the integrity of the collagen in the ligaments of these football players. And so I think just as like, obviously energy expansion is a massive theme all across the world right now. And I think we need to better understand the electromagnetic influences that can have on humans. And I think about Bitcoin miners too. I mean, Bitcoin miners are setting up these massive, and have been setting up these massive data centers for years. And I sit on the board of a company where our whole strategy is to go find substations and set up mining operations right next to them. And I think better understanding how the electromagnetic fields that are created by these power dense areas and their effects on the human body is going to be something that becomes more of a theme. I took that in a different direction. I'm sure you're expecting.
No, I love it. I mean, you surprised me. So this is a new rabbit hole, probably. All right. Last question. I usually ask everyone the same question, but you've been on before, so I'll ask this. What is a spicy or controversial point of view that you hold on Bitcoin right now that you think many others would disagree with?
I think the medium exchange use case is primed, ready to go, and I think it will see massive adoption in the next 2 years, where I think many people would argue we're still in the transition to the store of value phase. Nobody's going to spend their Bitcoin, but like I said earlier, I think the tools and the infrastructure to make it easy to receive and send Bitcoin, particularly if you're a business, are more mature than ever and accelerating at a rapid pace. The whole idea that Bitcoin is just going to be this dearth hard asset that nobody ever moves, I think is completely misguided. Bitcoin is money. It's a good store of value, and it's a really good medium exchange. It's a superior medium exchange to anything else out there right now. So I'm bullish on the medium exchange aspect of Bitcoin.
Awesome. I disagree with it. I think it goes slower, so I'm happy to be proven wrong. But thanks.
I think the agents. I think people are sleeping on the agents. The way, like, I think
I do agree with that, actually. And you see a lot. Was that Google or Shopify? Shopify with Google, they have this UCP, CUP, something protocol to have agents pay each other and stuff like that. And with that, I actually would agree, right? Because an agent, just an objective computer, instructed computer, whatever worker would only want to use something that is verifiable and not corrupted by humans, which in the digital sense is only Bitcoin. So in that sense, I do agree with that, and that could go fast. So this is not a debate. I'm not going to start a debate. But
well, I would posit to your listeners, because I've asked the models this, but obviously the models have context of, not because I use it for the business and do a lot of research on Bitcoin particularly, so I wonder if they're biased based on the context that I fed them over time. But if I ask the models, like, what would you prefer if you were an agent having to go complete task and spend money with other agents, what currency would you use? And I get Bitcoin a lot. But if any of your listeners are out there who are using these models that don't have any Bitcoin context, I would posit that you ask them and see if you get the same answer.
Awesome. Well, hit us up, let us know, and thanks again, man. Was a good talk, and we'll stay in touch. Let's see how it goes this year.
Always a pleasure, Bram.
All right, brother. Thank you. Cheers. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, you can click here to find more just like it, and click here to find all Bitcoin for Millennials podcast episodes. Also, please like this video if you want to help shine a light on the message of Bitcoin, and subscribe to my channel to stay connected. I hope to see you for a next episode. Bye.